Welcome, everybody. I'm Helen Hillich, your host for From My Heart to Yours. And today we're going to be talking about how to apologize, how to make a really meaningful amends. And this is something that I have used for years. I got this amends process from a dear friend of mine and my spiritual counselor and coach, Beth Green from the innerrevolution.org. And it is an amazing process, by far the most powerful process for making amends that I have ever seen. And I'm hoping that you will think so too. And I've used this maybe thousands of times in my private practice as well as my private life. So I know that it works and I know that it's powerful. And one of the things about an amends process, I've heard so many times from clients as well as myself that people often say, hey, I'm sorry about that. Sorry that I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry that I didn't come home on time, or whatever it is. But we don't feel that. We don't really feel them being sorry when all they do is say sorry about that. We don't know that they understood how it hurt us. We don't know that they care enough to really change. We don't know any of that when somebody just kind of flippantly says, hey, sorry about that. Or even cries and says, I'm so sorry. But it's like, you still don't know whether they understood what they did, because then they're crying and they're making it about themselves. So this is a really powerful tool, and I want you guys to be sure to write down the steps later in the show. So let me give you some real examples of what I mean by the regular way we deal with the need to apologize. Let's say my husband has a habit of going out and not communicating with me for hours at a time. I have no idea where he is, and I get upset when he does it. So he may say, oh, sorry I didn't let you know, or whatever, just to get me off his back. But he guesses that will be enough. But would that make me feel better? No. No, it doesn't make you feel better. And he thinks that the answer to that is just letting you know, that, oh yeah, okay, well, I'll let you know next time, which of course won't happen because you haven't really resolved the situation. Or let's say your husband's watching pornography, or your boyfriend is watching pornography behind your back, and you find out, and he gets defensive and he doesn't want to talk about it. Or he says that all men watch porn and what's the big deal? So again, of course, that doesn't change anything. That just means that you now know, and he knows you know, and so it'll just make more tension between the two of you. So that doesn't resolve a thing either. Or let's say that you work in a company, and at one of the meetings recently, one of your coworkers, or maybe even your boss, threw you under the bus and kind of insinuated that you didn't do a certain thing, when actually it was they who didn't do the thing. And when you ask them about it later, they say the famous, oh, sorry about that, I guess I was mistaken. Again, these things happen in real life all the time. And, wouldn't it be amazing if we have a tool that actually works? Anyway, in these examples, there is certainly no proper amends, and there is no healing happening. I'm still feeling separate from my husband who disappears. The woman is still feeling insecure about her husband who's watching pornography. And the coworker is not going to trust or want to work with that person who threw him under the bus. So in none of these examples is there any healing happening. Nobody feels good. So as I mentioned before, I think that I learned this tool from a book, and it's a free download from a friend and spiritual teacher, Beth Green, called Living with Reality. Just go to the innerrevolution.org and you can download it for free. And like I said, I have used this process hundreds of, if not thousands of times. So are you ready to learn the real way to make an amends? I hope so, because here we go. But first, let's set our intention. This is a universal step in almost any healing tool. It really should be in any healing tool, because to set your intention. And why is that? Because if your motive is off, the whole process will be ruined. As I was saying before, when the husband says something like, I'm sorry, next time I'll let you know where I am, his motive is really to get you off his back. It isn't to clear up the energy between you and to heal the situation. So that's not going to do any good, because there is no real healing there. So the motive is incredibly important. Or the woman who wants the man to make an amends for watching pornography so that she can get the upper hand in the relationship and lord it over him and manipulate him through guilt about hurting her. Well, that's not going to heal a thing either, is it? So what is a good motivation? What is a good intention in making the amends? Well, a healthy motivation is to restore the connection between the two of you. Restore the connection between the two of you. I can't emphasize that enough. That needs to be the intention. And it may be not even restoring the connection. It may be creating a connection that you haven't really been able to develop yet. So it could be even more than restoring some prior connection that you had. It may be leveling up your connection to the next level by making this amends. So if you get clear about setting your intention, that intention is to clear up your connection, to enhance your connection, to develop your connection, to nurture your connection. And again, whether that is the person at the work situation with the boss who threw her under the bus, or the coworker, that still needs to be your intention, is to clear up the connection. If your intention is to make the boss feel bad that he or she threw you under the bus, what's that going to do? That is going to make that person resent you even more, because now you've called them on the carpet and asked them for an amends, and then your motive is to just, again, as I was saying before, kind of lord it over them. That is never going to work, and it's going to backfire completely. So this step of checking out your intention and really clearing up your motivation before you start the amends process is crucial. I think you can see that. It's really crucial, because otherwise it is going to, instead of being a positive healing experience, it's going to just cause more problems. So be really, really aware of setting your intention. Now, that's not part of the amends process, but it's something that I've developed over the years that I know augments this process and every other healing process. So you're not going to find that in the book, but it's still a very important thing. It's kind of a development after the fact. Okay, ready to go? So there are 5 steps to this amends process. And I'm going to use this first example because it's actually from my own life. And my husband has made amends to me about it, and it worked. So let's use the example of the husband who disappears and doesn't communicate for hours. So I said there were 5 steps. I'm going to go through them slowly with you. I realize now that and then you say what you did very succinctly and clearly. In this example, what he would say is, I realize now that I have had a pattern of disappearing for hours without letting you know where I am going and what I'm doing and when I'll be home. Now, I want you to notice here that it's, again, very succinct and clear. And there is no excusing anything or defending anything or explaining anything. Like, he didn't say, I realize now that I have had a habit of disappearing, but it's because I didn't think it mattered to you, and that's why I did it. There's none of that. It's just stating what you did. So I realize now that I've had a pattern of disappearing without letting you know what I'm doing or where I'm going and when I'm coming home. Just stating the behavior that's caused the hurt. This is very key because, again, as in any tool, if you get the first thing wrong, or any of the steps wrong, really, but especially the first step wrong, then the whole process is going to be thrown off. So it's really important. And when you're doing an amends, or someone's making an amends to you, suggest that you spend some time and write down what you're going to say. Don't just try to wing it, especially when you're first doing it. Don't try to wing it. Sit down and write down what you're going to say in that first step. I realize now that I did blah, blah, blah. And if you see yourself making excuses or defending yourself, then start over and leave that out. Okay, the second step is, and again, I have a habit of saying, but this is the most important. This is a really powerful, this is the heart. Let me say that. This is the heart of this amends process, is this second step. And it goes like this. And I know, after you've said what you did, you say, and I know that hurt you by, and then you list, you connect deeply with that person and their feelings, and you list every single way that you can think of, that you can feel that they might have been hurt by what you did. Maybe you start off with thinking about how that would hurt you if someone did that to you. And don't pretend like, oh, that wouldn't bother me at all. Let yourself go there to really identify with the person and see how that would hurt you if someone did that to you. So in this situation, you list all the ways that has hurt you. Now, let me give you, in this case, particularly, I would say, I know that hurt you by making you feel abandoned, unimportant, rejected, unloved, alone, separate. Now, this may seem like overkill, but trust me, it is not. People want to know that you really understand how what you did to them hurt them. They really want to know that you care enough to think about every nuanced way that you have hurt them. So in this case, my husband listed all these things that he realized that going off for hours and not letting me know where he was made me feel abandoned, unimportant, rejected, unloved, alone, separate. And something else that you're going to notice, guys, is that if you're in a relationship and you end up making amends, numerous times, which if you're being honest, you will end up making amends numerous times, you will notice some themes, and your partner well enough to know what their vulnerabilities are, and they're going to show up over and over and over again. So just keep that in your mind that, for me, feeling rejected or unloved is a theme. And my husband knows that. And so when he's making amends to me, he realizes that often what his behavior is doing is triggering those old wounds of feeling rejected or unloved. So that's just a side note for you guys for making multiple amends over time, that you will see some themes appear. So then after you have spoken, we're still on step 2. After you have spoken all the ways that you can think of that you have hurt them, then you ask them, is there any other way it hurt you? And you ask them then to stop and reflect and go deep and come up with any list they may have that, let's add to this list. Maybe I was feeling discounted I already have unimportant down there. That's the only thing I can come up with right at this moment is maybe I was feeling discounted. So then I would say I was also feeling discounted. And then he repeats that. And you keep doing this process of, is there any other way that it hurt you, until neither one of you can think of any other way it hurt you. And something to be aware of here is that whoever is the repentant one, please do not get into crying and being very emotional, because this takes the focus away from the amends process. And it makes the receiver feel like they should be feeling sorry for you, for the apologizer. So I want you to really take that into account too. When I'm making amends, I feel really bad, and sometimes I want to cry, but I really try not to cry, because then I know I'm taking the focus off of the other person's receiving the amends. So it really contaminates the process if you get into being real emotional about it. Okay, and then the next step is also incredibly important. And that is, we call that the compassion step. And I don't know about you, but I really, really believe that people are doing the best they can. I really believe that. They're doing the best they can always. So this step says that. And even though I couldn't have done any better at the time, that's the whole step. It's just saying that. And even though I couldn't have done any better at the time. And that is your way, after all of these things that you're articulating about how you have hurt the other person. This is the break in that process to say, and I need to have compassion for myself, because I was doing the best I could at the time. And this is a very important step for the other party to hear too, because it says, if I could have done better, I would have done better. But this was the best I could do at the time. Okay, and then the fourth step is to say, I need to ask you to forgive me. Now, why is that a step? Because this acknowledges that really the forgiveness, the request for forgiveness, is for me, is for the one who is the offender, so to speak, in this situation. I need to ask for your forgiveness because I'm the one who did something. And it's going to make me feel better to ask you for your forgiveness and to go through this process. Whether you forgive me or not, honestly, is not the point. The point is that for me to feel like I have cleaned up my side of the street, to use an AA kind of phraseology, to know that I cleaned up my side of the street, I need to ask you to forgive me. And I need to go through this whole process. So that is a big reminder that you're not doing this for the other person, you're doing this for you, because you know it's the right thing to do, and because you won't be able to go on and feel clean and clear about yourself if you don't ask for their forgiveness. So then the fifth step is, will you forgive me? And whether they forgive you or not is not the point, as I said, but you need to go through that process of asking for their forgiveness. And, I would say that almost always the person does end up forgiving you, but even sometimes they don't, or they can't forgive you right then, and they need some time. And that's okay too. That doesn't mean that the process was a failure because they don't forgive you. That doesn't mean that at all. It means that they need some time. And they may never forgive you. I don't know. But most of the time, if they feel your sincerity in this process, they will forgive you. Now, the thing that is so beautiful about it is that both people benefit so significantly. The person who did the painful behavior, that's apologizing, receives the benefit of a clear conscience and an open heart. And the true reward of thoroughly taking responsibility for what they've done. That cannot be overemphasized. Until we take full responsibility for what we have done, we will not feel clear and clean ourselves. So this is one of the beauties of this particular amends process, is that it really gives you the opportunity to take full responsibility for what you've done in a very detailed way. And again, I said this before, but this doesn't happen when somebody says, oh, sorry about that. It won't happen again, which of course is never true. And the person that receives the amends feels truly understood and cared about. They feel like the apologizer, I don't know if that's even a word, but I'm going to use it because I want to keep it more neutral than the offender. But the apologizer, they really see that the apologizer gets how what they did hurt you. They get it. They feel it. The person receiving the amends feels understood. They feel cared about. They feel important enough for you to take your time and make yourself uncomfortable by owning that, owning what they've done and really going through this thorough amends process helps them feel that you've really taken responsibility and that they get the full benefit of that. Now there is the next step. Now, this next step is kind of hard to swallow for some people. But the next step is, does the receiver end up owing some kind of apology to the apologizer? And very, very often they do. And let's take, again, the example of me and my husband, because it's a true example. And after he apologized for going away for hours and not letting me know where he was, let me clear that up. I got to make an amends for a lifelong pattern that I learned from my mother about not making men feel important in your life. I got to make an amends for acting like his presence didn't matter that much to me. That it was fine with me if he went off and did his own thing, because I'm going to do my own thing. So that was a very powerful moment for me when I realized that I contributed to this situation with my own attitude about him, and that I acted often unilaterally and made decisions unilaterally. So that left him feeling unpartnered and independent. And that wasn't just his doing, because that was a long-standing pattern of his before our marriage. That wasn't just his doing, though. I contributed to that with my attitude. So I made an amends to him. I realize now that I've treated you like your presence wasn't that important to me. And how that hurt you was that it made you feel like it didn't matter if you went off by yourself, that I wouldn't miss you, made you feel unimportant, discounted, unloved. Interestingly enough, many of the things that I was feeling. Do you see that? And this, again, I'm saying it, I'm emphasizing it because this is so often the case, that one person thinks that the other person has damaged them, but then when they realize they owe an amends also, they realize that they have hurt the other person, usually in very similar ways. So, that was our process, and we went back and forth, and in the end, we both forgave each other. And then the issue really was cleared up. The issue was really cleared up. If she had stayed, now, well, let me back up a second. What could prevent this reciprocal amends from happening? Well, in many couples, there is a tit for tat kind of game going on, and pride and ego get involved. And it's like, well, finally he made an amends to me. What a schmuck he's been. And, I'm not going to let him off the hook by thinking that I owe him an amends, that I've got a problem on my side. I want him to suffer for a while, and then maybe I'll apologize. But in the meantime, I'll get him to clean the garage or something first. Something very similar to that. I mean, does that sound familiar? I mean, and I wouldn't say that a lot of times we are outwardly confessing this exact scenario going on in our brains, but believe me, it is. So often it is that when the one person makes the amends, the other person does not want to make the amends on their side. They want to punish that other person and get their pound of flesh, for the injury that they feel, rather than this leads back to the intention and how important it is, rather than holding to the intention that what we want is to clear things up between us so that we can nurture and develop our connection. Instead, it becomes a weapon that we can use against the other person to establish our superiority in some way. Oh, what a sad situation. So, the inevitable outcome when there is reluctance to make the needed reciprocal amends is that the issue will not be resolved. That's inevitable. The issue will not be resolved if you don't make a reciprocal amends when it's indicated. And it's not always indicated. You have to check your own conscience and really go deep to really understand whether it's a reciprocal amends is really right, or whether one person just owes the other person an amends and that's it. Sometimes that's true. But if it is indicated, if it is needed, that both parties make an amends and you don't do it, then something will not feel right and the pattern will continue. Let's take my example again. If I had not made the amends about treating him as if he were not that important in my life, then he would definitely have continued to go off on his own, or done something else, because he didn't feel that he was that valuable and that important to me. So I really, really needed to make that other amends for us to clean that up and to stop that dynamic altogether. And what happens if you do that, if you do make the amends that is owed? Well, I kind of speak for itself, but it really restores your integrity and allows you to go deep and allows you to connect in ways that you actually never have before. It's not just restoring you to the health of the relationship that you had prior to the incident, but it's actually helping you to develop your relationship even further. Now, one thing to remember, and this is very important also, is that once you have given and received the amends, whether it's back and forth or it's just one person, once that person has said they forgive you, then the issue is over. You cannot bring it up and harangue your partner about it in either direction. You don't get to say, yeah, but you used to do that and it was awful. And so you don't get to do that on either direction. The issue is complete, it's resolved, and you start afresh. So, isn't that an incredible tool? And something that I've said about other tools, and I'll say about this tool also, is that it's not just the power of the tool itself. It's the practice of doing it teaches you to be more self-aware in a general way. If you are in the position of having to make this long, tedious, painful amends over and over, you are going to think twice about doing that behavior. So it's a great deterrent, because it's painful to have to make this amends and to see how you're hurting your partner, to face the reality of how you're hurting your partner or your coworker or your boss or whomever it is. It does not just have to be a lover. It could be your parents or your child. But if you find yourself making amends over and over again, especially for the same behavior, wow, you are going to really learn to do something different. That's not working for you, as they say, what's working and what's not working. Well, that's not working for you if you have to make amends for the same thing over and over again. So it's a very powerful tool. Whereas, if you just say, hey, sorry about that, I'll do better next time, that's no skin off your nose. And you're likely to just keep doing it over and over again because there is no built-in deterrent to that. So try this tool. I think it will change. I know it will change your life. It will change your relationships. And let me know the results. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Helen Hillix, and that's Hillix. So at Helen Hillix on Instagram and Facebook. And I have a new website also, helenhillix.com, that's coming out. And send me messages. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and be on the lookout for my free gifts. And I love you guys. And if you find this podcast valuable, please share it with your friends. From my heart to yours, this is Helen Hillix, intuitive counselor and spiritual coach, signing off until next week. I love you all, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.